Hello, everyone. Welcome to this webinar on education in current times. I hope I am audible to everyone and you can see my screen. So before starting, if you can just go to the questions tab on your GoToWebinar panel, and if you can let me know that you can just type in that you can hear me and you can see my screen, that will be very helpful. If just any of the attendees can please go to the questions tab on your GoToWebinar panel. And yeah, okay. Thank you, Navpreet. Great. Thank you, Jafar. I'm happy to hear that I'm audible and you can see my screen. We'll just wait for a couple more seconds before we start so that all of those, lots of people have signed up for this webinar today. And I hope to reach out to all of them. So we'll just wait. Okay, great. So in the interest of time and for all the people who've joined in on time, we'll get started now and people can join in as and when. I will go through the webinar with all of you, and if there are any questions, it'd be great if we can take it towards the end. So let's get started. Once again, welcome to this webinar today on education in current times, and how could we make an action plan for now, for this year, as well as a roadmap for 2021-22. I really thank all of you educators who are here, who took out time from your busy schedules. I can understand how completely busy your schedules might be from morning till evening, and thank you all for attending. So let's dive straight into it. This situation was quite unprecedented, that what we are all facing as parents, as educators, where schools are closed. Everything that we knew about schooling from our past life, pre-corona times, have changed, and we have to improvise, we have to adapt to this new situation and hopefully overcome this situation together as well. This is something that I read at the World Economic Forum site, and it really rung very close to what I've been feeling. These are three of very obvious points, but something that we really need to ponder a lot more on in these current times. The first being that coronavirus-related disruptions have given educators time to rethink the sector. This is something which is sort of what we can say as the silver lining of the whole situation, where as educators, nobody ever got the breathing space or time to be able to think what we are doing. Can there be a better way to do things? Is there, a different way to approach education? We talked about learner-centric education, but were we truly there? And all of those questions, at least now we have time to reflect, to respond to our own thoughts, and maybe make small steps and small changes in this direction of, a long-term change. I can see that somebody has raised their hand. If there's a question, I would request that we can take it after the webinar. Great. So, so coming back to the slide, so I think this is one of the silver linings that at least the education sector has seen around the world. This is sort of pan geography. The second thing is technology has stepped up into the breach, and it will, as it seems, continue to play an important role in educating future generations. Again, this was something that was on top of educators' minds. There were a lot of conversations happening even before the corona times about how to implement and embed technology in meaningful and in conscious ways within the school system, but now it has sort of become, a given, a necessary, part of the teaching learning ecosystem. So that realization has also become very stark, and it overnight sort of changed the attitude of parents and educators about technology. And the third thing that really happened during this pandemic was that now we know that children have access to a lot of information. I mean, we have had that knowledge, but it's even becoming even much more prominent to see that children have access to so much information, which they can then work towards building their knowledge. So how does that define the role of the educator? And a lot of conversations, like I said, have happened about the role of educator transitioning into that of a guide on the side, and not the sage on the stage. But I think now, if more than anything else, more than any other time, it is important to really put a definition to that role. Now, when the pandemic started, and the second half of March is when most of the countries got really affected, and India in particular got affected, and the lockdown started. What really started happening was the response to this unprecedented shutdown, and many educators and many researchers have called that response as an emergency remote teaching response, wherein, because schools were trying to adapt to this new situation, what started happening was online classes starting being held for students. Homework assignments started getting uploaded on various portals. Many schools were already a little bit ahead of the game. They had their own online portals where they could share information, circulars, and even homeworks for students. And most of these homework, largely what I have observed through my conversation with a lot of schools around the country, across the country, has been mostly scanned copies of assignments or assessments, or even worksheets. So they were then, the copies were uploaded on these portals. And lastly, what also happened is, because I represent the edtech industry. I've been with the edtech industry for the last 10 years almost. The immediate response of the edtech industry was to offer free support or complimentary support to schools around the world, so that at least they could tide over this very confusing time. So lots of schools actually took benefit of that option, and they started exploring different programs so that they could align their students and their teaching methodology to that particular tool. So this is what I would refer to as the emergency remote teaching. Now, what came with this emergency remote teaching was a lot of challenges and constraints as well. The biggest challenge, which as educators you would have observed, and as a parent, I have also observed, is the disengagement of the learner because of the limited attention spans. I mean, imagine this, for us as adults, it's difficult to adapt to the whole thing about working from home, teaching from home, doing all our work, which we would otherwise have done in a physical office or a space, from home. So to put it from the perspective of the children, they too have faced this sea change of their environment, where they're not going to schools anymore, they're not meeting their peers, they're not interacting with their teachers, they're simply sitting in front of a webcam and trying to form a connection. It has been very, very hard on the kids as well. So there has been a disengagement from learning as they would have otherwise expected to happen in school. And children, and younger children, I speak for primary, for at least, have limited attention spans. So for them to sit through 40-45 minutes of class and be responsive and be receiving, and receptive of the content and information is very hard. The second thing that happened, that assignments, like I said, mostly were the scanned copies of worksheets. They are static in nature. They are just an online way of sharing the same worksheets that you would have given, the paper pen worksheets. Now the problem with that has always been that the worksheet does not cater to every child's level of understanding. It does not even assess every child at their level of understanding or take them to the next level. The idea of assessment should be to get a child to understand where their misconceptions are, where their need for remediation is, and to give them a nudge and a push towards actually improving in that topic. That has never been achieved through assessment. What instead has been achieved is, stress in children, the fact that they judge themselves, they base their perception of themselves through what they do in assessment. So that's an entirely different conversation. But in the context of what was happening in the emergency remote teaching, was that the same thing was then transferred online. The third thing that happened is student, teachers, and parents really got overwhelmed by use of multiple programs. And this was sort of also something that schools had not really thought of or prepared for, because they were just trying to do the best that they could. They were trying to look at different options, different programs, and see which one works best for them. But in that process, it did become a lot, it did become very overwhelming for teachers to implement these different programs, parents to understand, okay, what is the login for this, how do I use this, and stuff like that. Now, as the emergency teaching, remote teaching is continuing even after the summer break, there are some additional challenges that we are observing. One challenge is that students are experiencing higher screen time due to long duration online classes. Even though there have been some regulations that you can only take up till two online classes for primary and up till 4 for the secondary school students, there is a noticeable increase in the screen time because children have to sit through those classes, and then even after that they are doing a lot of work online. They're also on their TV screens and stuff like that, and these are not things that have, you can't do much about it if children are not going out, they're not interacting with other kids and playing. The second thing that has happened now, because most of the cities are in the unlock phase, is that parents are now moving about. Either they are going to their offices or they're working from home, and they have time constraints to support fixed time classes. So if there's a class at 9 or 9:30 and the parent has their work calls at 9:30, there is a clash, and it's hard to be able to support at least younger children to do those classes effectively without the support of an adult. And lastly, even teachers are facing the brunt of all of these things happening at the same time during the morning hours, managing home, managing their own school work, their preparation and delivery of the class, managing their own family. Potentially one spouse has moved out for work, and they're all doing this at the same time. And the teachers might have children of their own who may be in different schools, who need to be on online classes. So it's a very complicated situation now as the unlock has happened. Now, what could be the solution for this problem? We understand that there is this problem, and many of these things you would think are quite obvious, but it is still important to be said, because only when we know what we are facing can we work towards a solution. So we have sort of given the problem statement here. Now, in my mind, and from the experience that I have working both in classrooms and as an education technology provider, I understand that the ideal way, or the best way to respond to this current situation, would be to graduate from emergency remote teaching to online distance learning or online distance education. And I'm going to talk about that now. So, to spell it out for you as to what online distance education really means, online distance education has been around for some time. It has been around for a long time. And what it really means is that we are changing the learner context. We are changing the whole environment of the learner and the way that they learn through the availability and accessibility of various tools that they have. We are allowing learners to be more engaged in the learning process, and we offer them time, space, flexibility, and encourage self-learning and self-management. Now, these are some key aspects of online distance education where we don't think of them as, or we don't think of learners as, okay, we've given them some books to read and now they should just read it throughout the year and come back for an assessment after 6 months. No, that's not really what distance education should mean. What it means is that we are empowering the learner with enough tools to be able to navigate their own learning journey and then continuously come back to the guide or the teacher for answers, for support, to share their own understanding and to learn from the stories of the teacher, to learn from the experience of the teacher. Now, here I come to the second part of an effective online distance education. I'm not just saying that, bring in tools and, everything will be hunky-dory. That is not the case. Online distance education will become successful only when there is a hand-in-hand collaboration with the teacher doing synchronous lessons as well, which teachers are already doing, which schools are already doing, that they are getting the teachers and the students on a single platform, either through Zoom or any other media, and they are getting everybody to interact with each other. So that needs to definitely continue. But the idea being that in-person time is used judiciously. And by that, I mean there's a 4-step process. And in fact, this is quite elaborate. It could take another webinar just to cover these 4 points. But to sum it up, if I were to sum it up very quickly for you, it would mean having these 4 elements to your online class whenever you come online, whether it's for a 40-minute class or a 50-minute class, breaking up your lesson in these 4 parts. The first being sharing your own experiences so that the students have something to hear from you. I can't stress enough on the importance of storytelling, on the importance of sharing your own learning and what you feel, and even emotionally as teachers, how you are going through this pandemic and how you are overcoming your challenges. Sharing your experiences, being authentic with children will help you make a connection which will far outweigh any other benefit that you could have from these online classes. And I'm saying that from the perspective of comparing it even with content. So have an element of, even 5 minutes of sharing your own experiences. The second being showing a crisp PowerPoint. Now, a lot of teachers are spending an enormous amount of time building their own PowerPoints and building their own material to be able to showcase the class. But it will be worthwhile to actually reevaluate what kind of content you are showing to the children. Now imagine this, in a class, the biggest peeve of a teacher is many students who are backbenchers, they are not always engaged with learning. But here in an online class, luckily for us as educators, every child has become a front bencher, because the screen that you are sharing with the students is right in front of every learner. So if we really want to engage everybody, now is the time, because everybody is right there in front of our screen. So use that very effectively so that you can show a crisp PowerPoint, so that in those limited bullet points or whatever you're trying to show, children are more engaged and they are fully with you in that limited time. The third part of an effective online synchronous teaching is getting the students to attempt online activities. Now, again, these could be online activities, these could be offline activities, but getting students to do something where you are engaging the kinesthetic learner, where you're engaging the learner who learns by doing, not just by seeing or hearing, or so here is where I'm going to discuss a little bit more in detail, where you can use tools such as Magahai to be able to engage that aspect of the learner as well. And lastly, having students to present something. This is also a very important part of an online lesson, where children are sharing what they have learned, what they felt challenged with, what were their misconceptions, what were their mistakes, so that other children can learn from the mistakes, so that other children feel okay about not knowing everything and facing their fears and failures. And this essentially will help you run a very effective online class. So that is what I would recommend in terms of an online synchronous class. Now, let me just shift gears and bring you towards maths. We've talked about emergency response, emergency remote teaching. We've talked about online distance education, but now we're looking at the third aspect of maths. And I speak of maths because I come from that particular field. I am very, very concerned about how mathematics will probably pan out through this pandemic and in what impact it may have on STEM education in the years to come. Here is a bit of a study where students are predicted to be losing 50% of their math skills due to these school closures in Corona times. According to Northwest Evaluation Association, which is a non-profit, their assessments are being used in over 145 countries. So it's a fairly vast organization with a vast reach. And they are predicting that there's going to be a huge loss in math, arithmetic skills, even reading skills will get largely impacted through these closures. The second reason why I really focus on math in general and specifically now is that math needs grit and perseverance. It really needs you to stick it out and do the tough part of practice, of going back, of remediating, of actually solving through and persevering through a problem. And now, because there is a disconnect, because children are not meeting their teachers and their peers, that kind of a connection is lost. And lastly, math is learned best with engagement and enjoyment. There is no replacement to that. Unless the subject is enjoyed, it will ultimately end up being feared. And that's something that is now missing because there is no real environment to enjoy the subject because everybody's on their own. There's another finding that was very stark to me in terms of the mathematics learning loss. So here, if you can just see this particular graph, you will see that across grades 3 to 8, if there was a typical last day of school before summer, you can see that there's a gradual sort of increase, in the learning levels of children before the school day, last school day. And after that, there is a slight but gradual decline. Now, because the school closures happened in the middle of the middle of the month of March, you can see that there was an immediate decline in math learning, and even steeper than what was expected, much faster, steeper, and much earlier than expected. So all of that loss has to be caught up. Now, solution for this, again, my recommendation would be to try games-based learning. I come from this experience of having worked with different programs, and what I have really seen work very effectively with the student community is games-based learning. Games-based learning simply means that you are introducing a topic or you are practicing a topic through the medium of games. The embedded logic of the game has math inbuilt into it or whatever topic inbuilt into it. And the children are persevering through the game. They're playing the game and they're enjoying it, but they're not moving ahead unless they solve the real math problem. And that makes it very interesting because it gives some kind of context to the learner. It makes them understand that what they are doing or whatever they are studying in maths or in any other topic has some relevance that they can apply to other areas of life. So here I'm going to talk a little bit about Manga High. Manga High is a mathematics learning program. We have our content divided into two large buckets. The first being math games. Our program is extremely popular for math games around the world. We have games all the way from place value and number line, going all the way till linear equations, quadratic factorization, and lots of other pain points that come in maths for children, such as angles, such as fractions and decimals, area and perimeter, lots of topics which children can actually practice and enjoy and learn through the game-based portal. All these games are designed with the curriculum objectives in mind, and the questions adapt in difficulty level depending on the student's level of understanding. Now, this is very key. When we talk about games-based learning, the adaptiveness of a program is also very important because ultimately that is what we want. As educators also, in the heart of your hearts, you don't want to deliver an average lesson to the class. You want to deliver a lesson which is catered to every child's learning needs. But the other side of the coin is for a human being to know where every child is at in terms of their understanding at every moment, at every class is humanly impossible. This is where you can leverage the power of technology to give you that information, to give you that nudge towards the right direction of helping every child wherever they need to be. So this is where adaptability is very, very important. So if I'm a child who's struggling at the easy level, the system will keep me at the easy level. If I'm doing very well at the hard level, the system will challenge me to do questions at the extreme level. If I start struggling at the hard level, the system should then bring me down to the medium level. This is where the adaptivity really, really works. The second bucket in which we have our content is our quiz-based engine called Prodigy. Within Prodigy, we have 100,000 questions for children between ages 5 to 16, because Manga High is a program for children from classes 1 to 10. So that would correspond to children of ages 5 to 16. Here also, even in Prodigy, our questions adapt in difficulty level based on students' level of understanding. So as you can see, Prodigy activities are very direct, question-like. They are not as visually appealing as games. But here the idea is that children are building their conceptual knowledge as they are answering these questions. Through these questions, they are learning. They're learning by answering questions, not by watching any videos. That is one thing where I would really recommend that there is a lot more effectiveness in this kind of one-on-one learning rather than watching a static video. So here children can answer questions in different ways. They can solve it on paper and answer it as a in the fill in the blank box. They can drag and drop the correct order of operations and options. They can solve multi-step questions. There are also multi-step questions within the quiz engine. And there are obviously multiple choice option MCQ as well. The important thing, like I mentioned before, is the adaptability of the whole system. So being easy, medium, hard, and extreme being 4 gradations of difficulty level that we have within Manga High. Every child will start at an easy level, whatever topic it is in maths, whether it is fractions or area perimeter or any other topic, they will start at the easy level. But as they are progressing through the questions, the system will understand what is the level of proficiency and then challenge the child to the next level. So you go from easy to medium to hard to extreme, and you try to build your own learning path, and everybody will have a different learning path. I could go from easy to medium, then back to easy, and then medium, hard, and extreme. Somebody else might go from easy to medium to hard and extreme, and then come down to hard if they are struggling with some questions, and then again go back to extreme. So everybody has a unique learning path. And the idea of learning this way is also to motivate children to enjoy more math, and that we do through our gamification element. There are 2 different terms. Games-based learning, like I said, was the idea of learning by solving game problems. But gamification means that we are actually gamifying the experience. We are making it more fun for a child to be wanting to do more maths. And that we do through a medal point system. So we have 3 medal points that any child can get for any activity on Manga High. They can either get a bronze medal, they can get a silver medal, or they can get a gold medal. If they get a bronze medal, we can say that the child has basic proficiency in this topic. We can say that they have passed this activity and they're doing fairly okay. If they push their boundaries and go for a silver, we can know that they have advanced understanding of this topic. And if they push their boundaries even more and they get a gold medal, we know that they have exceptional understanding in this topic. They're doing very well. They can be given some extension activities. They can be made mentors for their peers. So if somebody else is facing a problem, you can ask them to remotely support maybe on phone or any other medium their other peer, so that their own mathematical vocabulary also improves. And then teachers get these reports where they understand, okay, if somebody's gotten a gray dash, it means that they have not attempted this activity, so they need some support. Or if they have not passed that activity, they've got a red cross, that means they've attempted but not passed, then there's some remediation that needs to happen. So teachers are at every point in time be able to understand what next activity they need to do. Like I said, teachers and school heads have access to reports. This is also a very, very important feature. We want children to get immediate feedback on what they're doing. That is the key thing in adaptive learning, is that immediately the child gets feedback of this is what I'm doing, this is where I need to improve. And the same thing happens at the same moment, real time, for the teacher as well. The teacher can access school-wide reports, they can access class-wide reports, they can access student level report as well. And they can know how many assignments this child has done or this class has completed, how many bronze, silver, and gold medal points does this child have or does this class have, how many total hours have been spent on this program learning maths and on what topic by the school or by the class or by the student, and how many independent activities has this child done. Have they shown proactiveness in learning maths? Even if I haven't set any assignment for the child, have they gone ahead and done some browse all activities and learned maths on their own? Have they gone through the recommended activities, which is a very key feature of Manga High, where our artificial intelligence engine actually recommends the right kind of activities for the child to attempt based on their activity on Manga High. So if the system sees that I'm struggling in the easy and medium phases of easy or medium difficulty level of a particular topic, then it can give me remediation maybe from the previous year or whatever I need to do in order to get better proficiency in that particular topic. Those recommended activities essentially act as a mini tutor for every child. And the teacher can get full access to what the child is doing and how they are remediating themselves. This is true empowerment of the learner. And this is true empowerment of the teacher as well, with good reports and with feedback that they can really work on. Now I'm going to give you just two more options that you can do. Like I said at the beginning of the webinar, that there is no one perfect solution for this problem that we are in. We will have to do some form of online distance learning, which is partly synchronous and partly asynchronous. By synchronous, I mean online distance learning that happens when the teacher and the students are in front of each other through an online medium like Zoom. And asynchronous means that children are studying at their own time, they're doing their assignments, they're doing their work, they're building their own learning paths at their own time and being accountable for their own learning. So both of these things need to happen hand in hand, and I can show you how a tool like Manga High can fit into both these particular aspects. So if you're doing an online lesson, if you're doing a 50-minute online lesson, then I would recommend that this is a model of a lesson. You can obviously tweak it, but what you could do is before the lesson, you can set up some assignments on a tool like Manga High for the class to do. As you start this lesson, you can give 10 minutes of teacher instruction. You can give an introduction of what the class is going to be all about. You can share your own story and experience of what happened over the weekend or how you approach this topic. Like I mentioned, this is also an important part. And then give 20 minutes or 30 minutes of time to children to actually do this activity on their own. While they have their own systems, they can log into their own student account and everybody can do it while the teacher is online. And give them that flexibility so that they feel connected both ways. They feel that they are learning on their own, but they are also in the presence of the teacher, where the teacher is there to answer any queries, if at all. So give them that opportunity. And then last 10 minutes, you can summarize the key learning points, you can summarize the key misconception areas, and then set up the tone for the next class. This would be, in my mind, sort of an ideal online lesson where it's both empowering and it's also very crisp use of your time with the students. And asynchronously, if you were to do this, this will be a very simple way. Like you've been setting assignments on different portals, you can also set assignment on Manga High. Because these assignments are self-made and they're built in within the system, you don't even have to waste your time setting assignment, checking assignment, making questions, all of that. Everything is automatically there. And you can set a due date of 1 week or 10 days and get your students to attempt the assignment before that. And you can also keep doing a check, right? A regular check, or maybe checking in 1 day before the due date as to how many students have passed this activity or gotten a bronze medal. Those that have earned a bronze medal, you can give them some extension activities, or you can encourage them to go for a gold medal. And those who have not gotten a bronze medal, which means they've not passed this activity, you can give them some remedial tasks, some more encouraging messages, because Manga High also has messaging feature within it. And then you can then again encourage them to go for a bronze. There are different sort of ways that you can achieve this through the asynchronous mode. So this would be, I would say, probably the best way to go forward if we are to encourage self-learning, if we are to encourage learner-centric teaching, and also helping teachers with good data to be able to work upon. So this brings me towards the end of this webinar. We've covered quite a lot. It's been quite a quite a lot of information that I've shared, but I wanted to also bring you towards what it means for the long run. We know that this pandemic has changed the way we approach education for the future. I would say it is not a short-term arrangement that we are doing. We are looking at actually reforming education in the long run. We are looking at education, reforming classrooms, and what is the ideal class size? What is the ideal way to teach? How should we ensure that there is a democratic way of learning and everybody is getting the same quality of education? All of those challenges are going to be there, and we'll have to work through them as we find solutions. It can't be that we will start once we have found solution to everything. We will have to get started, and through that process of going through these problems, you'll have to start finding solutions. So my recommendation is, if you look at the academic year of 2021-22, which is still many months away, but if you had to plan for it today, my recommendation is to help parents adopt technology in a much better way. I know that coronavirus has already changed that for many families, where internet and device accessibility has been worked upon. But if it hasn't been worked upon, or if you're working in a demographic area where it is not a common thing and there is a resistance from the parent community towards technology, my humble request to you would be to actually start counseling them from now onwards, to say that this is going to be a necessary thing. Now that internet packages are getting very accessible and affordable, it will have to somewhere feature in one of the solutions. And I can completely understand. I'm not saying that every family has the wherewithal or means to afford devices and internet, but there will have to be more corporate and government interventions for those kinds of households. There is possibly a solution where there could be community labs being set up, which is something that is getting looked at. There are many corporates who are looking at doing funding and CSR activities in the areas which are vulnerable and which need this kind of support. But largely, for those who can reach out to their parent community, now is the time, so that you can then look at a smooth 2021-22 implementation. The second thing that I would really urge you to do is look at technology platforms that facilitate true self-paced learning, formative assessments, and immediate feedback. If you're looking at any online platforms which are just giving, just converting the textbook into ebooks for children to read, I would really say that that is a suboptimal use of your time and resources and the children's time. So go for programs that are adaptive in nature, that facilitate self-learning, that make learning enjoyable for children, because joy is something which is the need of the hour for our kids, and that have some level of assessment and feedback system built into them, because the ultimate idea is that we want every learner to enjoy the act of assessments and to learn from assessments and not fear them. So look at platforms like that. And the third and the last point that I would like to raise here is, even if you've tried 4 or 5 programs, I would say for the rest of this year, commit to one program for a subject, whether it's math, science, English, whatever you're doing, just commit to one program so that you are able to see all the aspects of it, whether this works for your school or not. And then your parents and your student community will get the opportunity to get adjusted to it, to acclimatize to that particular platform, so that next year things can be rolled out much smoothly. So if you follow these 3 steps, I think, and these are fairly logical steps, I know that as educators you must have thought about it. I'm just reiterating this here, so that I'm spelling it out for you, so that this webinar helps you take away some important points for you to work upon. So this brings me to the end of this webinar. Thank you so much for attending. We are actually a little bit before time. We are ending now. You can obviously reach out to us. If you have any questions about Manga High, you can reach out to us at support@mangahigh.com. All of you will also have my personal email ID as well, which is ritika.subhash@mangahigh.com. I'm sure you have received mails from and messages from me. I'll be happy to support you if there's a way in which we can set up your school on a trial. And in fact, even now on GoToWebinar, in your questions tab, there is you can always, and here on GoToWebinar, you can let me know if you have any questions, and I'll be happy to answer. Okay, so I think there's a request from Miss Fatima, and she has asked that if I can share the PPT from start, so that you can take a recap. Sure, I'll be happy to do that as well. So there's a question from Miss Rima, is Manga High some kind of app? So it is an online platform, ma'am. It's called mangahigh.com, and I will just show you. I'll just show you the site as well. So you can, just like you go to gmail.com, you can simply go to mangahigh.com, mangahigh.com, and this will bring you to the page. It is a mathematics learning program for children for grades 1 to 10 or children between ages 5 to 16. So we also have, in fact, pre-kindergarten kind of content on building number sense in children. So everything from kindergarten, you can say, to grade 10. So you don't need an app for Manga High. You don't need to download any app. You can just go even on your phone browser. You can type in mangahigh.com. And once you have your login ID, you can just log in. You can click on login. And then as a student, you have your user ID and password. And as a teacher, you use your email ID and password. If you've never registered on Manga High, if you've never been active or registered on Manga High, all you need to do is you can go to mangahigh.com and then click on sign up. And I'm happy to set you up for a free trial, set your school up for a free trial. If you want, we can run that as well. So if you just click on register, mangahigh.com, and register, you should be able to register yourself and your school on the platform for a trial. There's no financial obligation for the trial. So again, it is very useful. Like I said, go ahead and do explore these programs, because ultimately this year, if not this year, if you've already not done it, by next year, this is going to become a necessity. I've talked about the importance of really, focusing on maths. If there is a learning loss of maths, I mean, that's going to be a loss for everybody, for all our community, especially for India, because of our demographic dividend. We don't want our children to lose their arithmetic skills. We don't want them to lose their problem solving skills. And we need to act now. So I would highly recommend that you go ahead and register yourself on the platform and start to make best use of it. Again, if there is anybody who wants me to register them, you can also message me here and I'll be happy to do that. There's another message by Mr. Jaffer about how about the cost per student. So our cost per student is fairly affordable, I would say, and it depends on the number of students that you want to enroll from the school. So if your management decides that your entire school is coming from classes 1 to 10 on the program, then we can work out the offering for you so that it fits well into your budget. If there is just a handful, say 2 or 3 classes, say about 30, 40, 100 students coming in, then the price per student may be slightly higher. But again, if you have looked at platforms online, we are priced much lower than available prices. And the benefit is that Manga High is a London-based company. It's an international firm. We work in about 50 plus countries. We work with about 7,500 schools globally. And the acceptance of the program is such that even Mr. Bill Gates has endorsed Manga High in his 2012 newsletter, saying Manga High really engages the learners. We have that clipping as well. So you get an international program at the price of a local program. So there's a lot of benefit there. I would really urge you to, if you're interested, I can actually send you a quotation based on the number of students that you would like to subscribe to. So there's another question by one of the attendees that we are a rural school. If you have issues with the internet connectivity, is the program feasible? My answer to that would be, intermittent access. Suppose you have internet access for a few hours in a day, that could work. You can get your classes to happen at that time. Or, if you have limited bandwidth, then I would say that keep the class size short, so you can actually split your class into two. If your class is of 40 students, you can split them into 20 each, and at one time only 20 kids are using the internet. But internet is a requirement. It's a fully online program. It's a fully cloud-based program. That is the power of this program. So internet is required. Something will either need to be worked out in terms of better connectivity, or if you're right now, if the children are at home and parents have access to Geo or any other internet that is available on the phone, that could work as well. I hope that answers your question. So just as a recap, I'm just going to show some relevant slides. We talked about, some of the things that the pandemic actually gave to us in terms of time to rethink our sector, in terms of, accepting technology a lot more than we did before, and in terms of also rethinking of our roles as educators. I talked about how the first response to this pandemic was emergency remote teaching, and this was the best that schools could do at that time. There is nothing against schools. The idea is that they tried to adapt to the situation as best as they could, but this emergency remote teaching came with its own challenges and constraints, the biggest being the disengagement of the learner and the fact that learners were not receiving that kind of motivation and enjoyment to the content, connectivity to the content. And more challenges continued to be added to this list, because now parents are looking at moving out to their workplaces and not being able to support so much. So then we talked about online distance education. The idea of online distance education is to ensure that the learner context is changed. They have access to tools. They have access to the teacher for a limited time as well, and the engagement is much higher and the flexibility is much higher. So my recommendation is to use the in-person time very crisply so that the online lessons can be short, the screen time can be less, and the learning and the enjoyment can be most. I talked about why maths is an area of focus that all of us educators, whether we are math teachers or not, whether we are vice principals, principals, heads of schools, we have to really look at math solutions. And one of the things that I talked about was games-based learning. Manga High is a games-based learning program. So we have games for a lot of these topics where the math logic is inbuilt into the game. As the child is playing the game, they're learning their math, they're practicing, and they can't move to the next level unless they know their math. So this is a wonderful way for them to start enjoying the subject. And then we have the quiz-based engine where children are learning. So games are good for practice and grit and perseverance, and Prodigy quiz engine is good for actually learning maths as they answer questions. So also the idea of building a love for problem solving. We don't want children to think of problems as problems. We want children to think of problems as questions that need answers, that needs to be solved. And then I talked about adaptability, very important. Whichever program that you look at, whether it's Manga High or any other program, please make sure that it is an adaptive program, that it adapts to the level of understanding of every child, so that the weak child gets the support that he or she needs, the bright child gets the challenge that he or she needs. So all of that needs to be factored in. I talked about the gamification elements of Manga High. I talked about the reporting feature for teachers. And I talked about how you can include a tool like Manga High even in your live classes, in your synchronous online classes, to make it more engaging. And of course, asynchronously, you can use it for homeworks. And then I talked about the roadmap that you can have for the next year, because I know that this year has been fairly challenging for all of us. But
We have to look to the future. We have to be hopeful. It is only through us that we can transfer this hope and this positivity and this optimism to our students. So let's be hopeful and let's solve this problem together. We are all in this together as parents, as educators, as edtech providers. Let us support each other to be able to do the best that we can for our learners. Here is my email ID. I'm just typing my email ID. Some of you have asked for it. And I'm typing it for all of yours benefit. If you can see my screen, I have just put my email ID on this particular page. Please feel free to note down this email ID, which is RITIKA, my first name, .SUBHASH, my last name, @mangahai.com. And if you are convinced with what I'm saying and you want to go for your school, I'm happy to set you up for a free trial for your school, and then we can talk about the finances. I can share quotations that work within your budget and don't stress you out as educators and as school heads, and then we can take it from there. Thank you, Fatima ma'am. Thank you all of you for attending. If there are any other questions, I'll be happy to take them now. Great. If there are no other questions, I'm thankful to all of you for attending. I look forward to hearing from you positively. I believe you will be receiving a recording of this webinar as well, since you signed up for it. And all the best, and keep doing the great work that you're doing. Thank you, everybody.